Sound is.
I think it's fair to say that absolutely nothing compares to a summer spent on a Greek island. And Nick, I think our guest today agrees with us, right?
Definitely, mate. There's nothing like spending time on a Greek island, as we all know.
Well, we're going to shake things up a bit here at Ouzo Talk, and we're going to do that with a series of episodes on the Greek islands. And Nick, what better place to start than Santorini?
Look, Tom, every human needs to go to a Greek island. It's got to be on everyone's bucket list. And what a way to start. Santorini, I think we've all been there. We've all got some great memories and stories, which we're about to hear, I'm sure.
Yes, it's the postcard image of Greece, and with good reason. The sight of those steep cliffs overlooking the deep blue of the caldera, dotted by shiny white houses with blue doors and windows and little churches with blue domes. It's one of, if not the most romantic images that Greece has to offer, but there's more to Santorini than that postcard image. There's thousands of years of history, and that includes the advanced Minoan civilization. There's the legend that Santorini may be the site of the lost city of Atlantis, Nick. There's incredible food and wine, and of course, that amazing sunset. I mean, honestly, probably one of the best in the world, isn't it?
I think it is the best in the world. As you know, I've done a lot of travelling in my time, and nothing beats it.
It's one of the most visited islands in Greece and one of the top destinations probably in the world. It's also near impossible to take a bad picture when you're there. Have you noticed that? You could be the worst photographer ever and all your pictures come back looking absolutely mint.
Yeah, no, I hear you, mate. It's one of the wonders of the world.
For sure. We're going to cover a lot of that off today, but we thought we need a Greek island expert to do this conversation justice. And who better to get than the host of the hit TV series My Greek Odyssey, which is about to launch the 5th season of the show. He's the man, the myth, the legendary Catherian, Peter Maneas. Panayoti, welcome back to the distillery, mate.
Tom, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
How are you, legend? Mate, great to have you back.
Thanks,
again.
Nick. Likewise.
Well, we're so glad to have you back here, Pete. Boys, should we have a drink to kick us off?
Sounds right, mate. Let's do it.
Siniamas, boys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Welcome
Cheers.
back to the distillery, Pete.
Cheers.
Oh, yeah. Nick, what are we drinking, mate?
We are drinking roots today, would you believe? It's a herb spirit. It's a sweet liqueur.
Okay.
Tell me what you think of it.
Mate, it tastes very herby, I've got to say. You know, there's a little bit of that, almost that cough medicine, the Dr. Pepper type thing there as well. But it's warming. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, look, it is. It's definitely, the girls from the Greek Providor provide it for us. It's a traditional Greek drink. The herbs are from the mountains of Greece, would you believe? How good's that? And there's stuff like vanilla pods in there, licorice roots,
Yeah, you get a bit of that,
nutmeg
actually.
nuts. Yeah, it's got that bitter sweetness to it. Actually,
Yeah.
I don't mind it. It actually tastes really good.
I can see this being something after you've had dinner or something like it, almost like it's a port or something like that. What do you reckon?
Probably is after a meal. Yeah, you're right, actually. After a main meal. It goes down really good, actually.
It's definitely different to what we normally drink. I mean, Pete, the last time you were here, we had botanikon, which you introduced us to.
Yeah.
We've been having it ever since.
Yeah.
And
That's more an aperitif. I think what you've got there is more digestive.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you're quite right. You'll be pleased to know that botanikon is now in a lot of places. You can actually get it in a lot of bottle shops around here in particular.
Fantastic, because I've run out.
Have you?
Yes.
Mate, we should run up the street and do a do a botanikon run.
Well, thank you to the girls. This is awesome. It's going down really well.
Absolutely.
It's going down with the mezadaki that we've got as well here. So.
Beautiful.
Girls, thank you very much. And Pete, last time you were here, you'd just finished filming season 5, and by the time we release this episode, it'll be out next week. How excited are you to be bringing this chapter to the people now?
I don't know if I can be any more excited than I've been in the past, but this time even more, amazingly, because the first part of Series 5 has 6 episodes on Crete, and that has a lot of history for me because I explored Crete, specifically Chania, with my Kubaro in our early years. So there's a lot of memories in Crete, and it's a wonderful place. And the rest of Series 5 is basically the Kyklades, or the Cyclades, as many people know.
Yep.
You know, we do places like Santorini.
Fantastic.
Good little segue. But Crete's a massive island, so
Well,
6 episodes, geez.
Crete is the biggest island in Greece by area. It's twice as big as the next island, which is Evia, which is twice as big as the next island, which is twice as big as the next island. So that gives you an idea of the mathematics behind the size of Crete. It could be its own country, and it once was, you know.
Yeah.
It was the beginning of civilization in Europe, basically, they say.
Yeah. And Vrasidas in the Zorba episode did say it was a country there for a
Yes, he
month
did.
or month or two.
Yeah, Professor Vrasidas Karalis.
Well, if you talk to Cretans, they'll tell you it's the start of the world, you know.
Yeah, of course.
Michael Butter and his brother Nick, they'll tell you that every day of the week, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And look, you've done a little bit of extra filming since we last spoke to supplement what you'd already done. Is that it now? Are you happy to sort of wrap up My Greek Odyssey? I mean, there's still a couple of seasons to come.
So there's Series 6 and Series 7, and when you in post-production on Series 6 and Series 7, so like we said, 5's here next week. It's already out in Greece. 6 and 7 will come out in the next couple of years. But the series are coming out at different times for different people. For instance, Series 5 came to the Greeks first in Cosmote, pay television. They got it first.
Wow.
And their free-to-air ERT gets it last.
Yes.
So they're getting, they're starting season 1 in October.
Wow,
Of this
okay.
year. So it's going to free-to-air in Greece, ERT, or ERT as you might know it.
Well, how have the Greeks received it? Is it for them? I mean,
Well, there's not many that actually watch pay television, but I'll tell you what, when I'm there, I know the ones that have watched it because they all come up to me and they love the show.
Yeah, really?
Because, you know, Greeks are very loyal to their own islands. And what they'll do is they have their place in Athens or Thessaloniki, and they'll have their summer residence, as you know. And they'll generally do that for the rest of their lives. And they might see one or two other islands. So they very rarely see the plethora of geography that they have in their various archipelagos.
Yeah, I guess Greeks in general, do they watch much TV? Especially in summer, you'd like to think they're always out.
During the summer, for
feeling I
sure.
get.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of watching TV during the summer months. There's too much happening. You're either working in tourism or you're out just enjoying the sun.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. You can see why.
It does. But there you go. But, you know, a show like this, I guess and you've covered all these islands. I'm sure all these residents would be so proud seeing their island on TV, and they'd be spreading the word for sure.
I think they are, yeah.
Now, Santorini is featured in this season. What was the experience like filming there this time around?
A lot more people knew me. So a lot of people travelling in 2020. And a lot of Americans. So we were pulled up a fair bit. But
Did that make filming difficult?
No, I enjoy talking to people.
Fantastic.
You know? So if you pull me up in the street, I'm happy to have a chat to you about Greece and have a coffee with anyone if I've got the time, obviously. But Santorini is a special place because it's got so many memories for me. It's got some romantic memories, both prior to getting married and getting married.
Yeah.
It's just got so much to offer. Santorini, people talk about exactly what you just talked about earlier, Tom, the postcard thing that it is, but there's so much more to Santorini, and people only discover the surface of it when they go, even though it's a small island. So it was exciting for me, yes.
And when did you go to Santorini? When did you do this recording?
We were there in 2020.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's
2021.
Okay.
Yeah, the years go by so quickly I can't remember. 2021, 2021 we're there.
Okay, so that was just during the peak of COVID, I guess. Or
Peak of COVID, but it was pumping.
Wow.
You know, we see you're in Australia, mate, and we're in some sort of little bowl and some sort of bubble that doesn't really know what's happening around the rest of the world. And Europe was pumping in summer in 2021.
Fantastic.
It was their best year at the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And things have exploded over the last year or so as well. I mean, I was there probably a couple of months ago now. I've never seen it as busy as that before.
40 million tourists this year.
Yeah.
And that is a record. Superseded the record by, 15%, which is a lot of people.
It's huge.
But they keep taking them in, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most amount of flights, I think, landing in and out of Athens, I think, ever. Similar sort of statistics for the Greek islands as well.
Yeah.
I mean, how much bigger can it get? How many more people can we take?
Well, there's so much to do because there's so many places that they haven't seen, all these islands, you know, and you're able to go and see them. The infrastructure is great to see. So we can take 80 million. Don't worry, people keep coming, keep going.
Yeah, okay. So I take it to get to Santorini, you took Miazoi,
Certainly did, yes.
and you docked at one of the main ports.
Well, we didn't dock at the port. What we did...
Well, can you go in? I don't think you can.
You can go in. It's not the place to take a super yacht, you know, unless you've got a really big one and you just anchor in the middle of the bay, in the middle of the caldera.
Yeah, right.
But we stern to at this specific spot that that Captain Yanni knows about, and I don't want to reveal where it is, but it was great, and we had good access. We were there for some time. We really enjoyed it. Santorini for me. You guys call it Santorini. I call it Thera because...
Well, that's the original name, isn't it?
Well, Santorini is the name that the Venetians gave to it. Santorini, Saint Irene, which is a church on the island, and there's Perissa, but there's also one in Thiracia. We're not too sure it's from Thiracia, the church in Thiracia, or the one in Perissa, but its real name is Thera, you know, and Thera is obviously the leader of the Dorians in the 9th, 10th century when they colonised Santorini or Thera.
But it's had a few names, hasn't it? Was Thera the last name or the
Thera
first
was
name?
Thera was the name from
Santorini.
the 9th century BC right through to Byzantine times. So we're talking something like 15 centuries, you know. It was named Thera. After that, the Venetians called it Santorini, and we still call it Santorini today. But if you look on any Greek site, the airports, whatever, they'll say Thera, you know, and then they'll have the conversion of Santorini in English because they want to, you know, they want to keep the original name that stuck for longer than Santorini anyway.
Yeah, true. Because it was used to be called Callisti as well, the beautiful
listen,
one.
mate, I've discovered 157 islands, and I don't know it all, but I know those two. That's as far as I go.
That's right. Yeah, I did a bit of reading. Callisti, and then they call it Strongili, and then I think...
Well, Strongili is also
like
one of the islands, you know, one of the smaller islands of the archipelago of the caldera, but somewhere else. Yeah.
A lot of history,
a lot of geography, a lot of geology, a lot of ancient history. The ancient history is absolutely awesome. You know?
Well, we'll talk about all of that. But look, from the outside looking in, it's the ultimate honeymoon destination for people. And you talk about that romanticism associated with it. It's generally an island for couples. The Greeks say that when you go to Santorini, it either makes or breaks your relationship. I don't know if you've heard that. Either you get married or you split after visiting there. Have you heard that saying, and why do you think that might be?
All I know is it's the number one honeymoon destination of any island in Greece. You know, you don't go for a honeymoon to Mykonos, and if you do, you pick the wrong island. You know?
Because you're coming away with a divorce.
I mean, it's known for its honeymoons, and now today in the 21st century, it's for Instagrammers. It's like the Instagram capital for photography because, like you said earlier, you really can't get a shot wrong when you're taking a photo there. And there's all the beautiful people taking photos of themselves on every dome, on every white building, on every cliff, over volcanic magma that's gone off over the last 3,000 years. And the colours of obviously the sunset from Ea and Fira is tremendous. And the vantage points are good, and you know, you've got villages that are living on cliff sides that at some moment in time will no longer be there, you know, whether it's 100 years or 1,000 years, these things will come down one day from the earthquakes, you know. But that shouldn't stop you from going because we have lots of meters and things that are stuck in the rock to make sure that we can forecast something like that happening. So you shouldn't be concerned about earthquakes and the thing blowing.
And there is a lot of that stuff happening around monitoring the volcano and doing that sort of thing.
You bet. There's a lot of it happening, especially at Nean Palya Kameni, the two smaller islands that basically are the remnants of the last eruptions. You know, I went up there on my show and I was there with a volcanologist and we did all that sort of stuff. It was good fun. It was good to see that the Greeks are intensely involved in monitoring and forecasting that, not just to make sure that it's safe for people, but to understand the geology of the place. And the geology is wonderful. I just absolutely love it. I got so excited by seeing these veins in the caldera. We talk about a caldera. That's basically the rim of the volcano, and you see it from. If you've got to go down, you've got to get in a boat and go down to the water, and go up to the edge and look up, and you see there's 76 veins where they're basically cracks where magma has found its way up because of this pressure of all this magma trying to get to the surface of the earth, and it finds these cracks, and you see this blade of magma, and in some areas it might be 2 or 3 feet wide, in other areas it's 20 feet wide, and you can see the different coloured rock, and it's just so exceptional that you're seeing history. You're seeing so much history in one spot. Sorry, I'm getting on.
No,
that's
good.
the
That's
geologist in me, you know.
Yeah, I was going to ask, maybe we can just touch on that. So maybe explain what a caldera is.
The caldera is basically the rim of an extinct volcano, and extinct volcano is probably not the way to say it because it's extinct in our time, but at some time it might blow again.
Dormant.
It's dormant. That's the term. So it's the rim, and what the rim of the volcano. It's a rim of volcano, and Santorini. When you look at it, you basically see 2/3 of the rim of the volcano because 3,600 years ago, this thing blew. It blew sort of 1/3 of its caldera away, and the only remnants are Santorini, which is probably one of the most visited islands in Greece, and the other side is Thirassia, which is probably one of the least visited islands in Greece. And they're so close to each other. In actual fact, there are people that live in Santorini that work in Thirassia. I interviewed the teacher of the school in Thirassia.
Yep.
And one thing you should do if you get a chance when you go to Santorini is take the boat over to Thirassia and see the absolute opposite of the most popular island in Greece, because it's a really good thing to do.
Yeah, wow.
You know, from a population of 15,000 people and 2 million tourists a year, you go to a population of 150 people and maybe 1,000 tourists if you're lucky.
Well, what I was going to say is people on the island say that families, historically in the last sort of century or so, families would leave the land around the caldera to the less favoured children, while the favoured children would receive land more inland and away from that. The less favoured offspring are now benefiting from the tourism boom.
Absolutely. Now, my personal opinion is I love Thirassia because that reminds me of a Santorini I never got to visit, you know. Thirassia is most of the people that go there either live there and work there, or it's the occasional yacht that comes to Santorini. The winds are blowing the wrong direction, so they have to protect themselves. So they go to Thirassia. And there's a bunch of tavernas along the port there, and it's a safe haven in any weather. And they discover Thirassia that way, which is a wonderful thing. They don't go to Thirassia to go to Thirassia. They're going there for Santorini. And what you'll find is that a lot of the yachties that go to Santorini and have to take cover in Thirassia will walk away with the experience of Thirassia more so than Santorini.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it's like a before and after sort of.
It basically is, yeah. And there's a lot of that in Greece, and in Santorini, within 1.5 kilometres, you can experience that.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And you said before it's a archipelago.
Yeah.
So that means what? There's 5 islands, 6 islands.
So there's half a dozen islands. There's, like we said, there's Thirassia, there's Nea Kameni, there's Palya Kameni, Strogili, Thera, Santorini, and there's a couple, I can't remember them all, mate, but yeah.
Yeah, did I read right? Nea Kameni is one of the newest islands in the world or in Europe?
That's pretty much right. And when you walk up to Nea Kameni, because there's a tour that takes you up to Nea Kameni, so you'll take a boat ride, go to Nea Kameni, and you'll walk up to the top, and you can fry an egg on the rock there because it's that hot. You can see the sulphur coming out. But as you walk up, you'll look to your right and your left, and you'll see the different times. Like there was a time in 1600 when there was an eruption. There was a time in 1100. There was time just recently, and you'll see the lava, the different coloured lava, magma having gone off, and you'll see a bit of green, and then you'll see black. You know the black was the last one.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's really impressive to see. It's just a wonderful trip up to the top, and then you'll come back down after you've fried your egg and smelt the sulphur, had your walk, got your exercise for the day, get back in the boat and head back, and on the way back they'll drop you into the water for a swim in the sulphur springs where it's nice and warm and bubbly, and you'll get your little spa. It's a real day's event that you'll do in Santorini. That's something everybody does, but Santorini has so much more.
Yeah, I could imagine. So essentially, caldera, just touching on that, so it's like a big sinkhole, isn't it? So one volcano, the middle bit just went straight into the ocean.
And you know,
Blew its top.
And in the middle of summer, the middle of that caldera, which is basically a bay, there's sometimes, not recently, but there's sometimes prior to 2019, there was 11 cruise ships in the middle of that, in the peak of summer, up to 11, 2 to 11.
Wow.
And they don't anchor because it's that deep.
Oh, shit.
It's that deep. There's a whole lot of buoys that are out there, or these days the ships have their own little sat-nav PSI drive motors that work, so it just keeps it in that one spot. But it's that deep, you know, and they all talk about that it's that deep. How
deep is it, do you know?
Well, I think it's 350 metres in some spots when we measured it, but it could be deeper in others. I don't really know. It's like the thing about the lost city of Atlantis. That's a bit of a myth when you go back to thinking about it, you know. When you ask the professors and the scientists that I've spoken to,
just to frame it for people, when you're looking from places like Fira and whatnot, standing on the top of the caldera, essentially what you're doing is looking into the middle of a volcano. That
Absolutely.
bay, that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's a massive volcano. And this is supposedly the largest eruption that occurred in recorded history.
yes,
So 200 miles
of
the
pyroclastic cloud, that pyroclastic cloud that comes up into the atmosphere and changes the weather of the world at the time. How impressive is that? For years, you know, you got this darkness for a while. You got acid rain coming down with the pyroclastic cloud. It's a climate change thing, you know. So we all know about
genuine,
climate change. But it's a climate change thing that happens in a short amount of time. But it all came back to normal eventually.
So what I read was the ash cloud obviously reached to Egypt, or the pyroclastic...
The ash cloud,
reached Egypt.
Yep.
It changed the climate of the earth for 2 years, essentially 2 years of winter. It wiped out a civilization to some degree with the Minoans.
They say it wiped out the Minoans, but if you watch my show...
here we go.
If you watch my show,
Get ready.
I speak to some fairly educated academics that'll tell you that it didn't wipe out the Minoan civilization. It definitely affected it. There's no doubt.
They just transitioned possibly.
But it was part of the fall of the Minoan civilization.
Okay.
But I'm not going to tell you too much. You should watch the show. But I can tell you now, it was not the sole reason for the fall of the Minoan civilization.
Well, let's talk about the Minoans real quickly, because obviously we've all seen those frescoes, for example, from Akrotiri in Crete as well. You know, really colourful, really vibrant.
Tom, I'm a big fan of those. You know, if you come to my house,
we've seen them.
To my living room, I've got copies of those frescoes from Santorini, from Akrotiri, in my living room. And I'm proud to say that they're copies. I have no problem. They're great copies, mind you.
Yep.
But I'm proud to have copies up there. People say, is that original? I said, no, mate, it's not an original. I'd go to jail for 20 years if that was an original. But I'm so proud of them because there's so much in the history of what happened at the time, because that explosion 3,600 years ago, it basically wiped out a civilization in Santorini anyway, overnight. So the pyroclastic cloud came down on Akrotiri, which was that ancient city, and it preserved so much that we're able to understand so much about that civilization because of this geological phenomenon that happened 3,600 years ago. And you walk through Akrotiri, because the first time I walked through the ancient town of Akrotiri, it was uncovered. There was no roof.
Yes.
And they dug up a bit. 10 years, 15 years later, when I walked through again, they had a cover on it. And now they're discovering so much more, little by little. There's captains' houses where you see sewerage. You see sewers.
Indoor plumbing.
Indoor plumbing, you know, where a WC once was.
Yeah.
And this is 3,600 years old. And it's so impressive.
Clay bathtubs and all sorts of things.
Yeah, and two tubes where you had hot and cold water. They said they used the hot water from the
geothermal.
It's so impressive because
3,600 years ago this is.
Yes.
Mind you.
Yeah, it's such a wonderful walk through. And that's just one of the ancient cities, you know. There's also ancient Thera, you know, where the Dorians in the 9th century BC, they colonised, and there were Spartans there. We're talking about Spartans, and it's such a nice location. They left their best spot, basically the peninsula of this village, which is known as the Gymnopedia. And in the Gymnopedia, what they would do is they would have shows. The young Spartans would show themselves off, you know, and do all sorts of things with weapons and stuff that was really impressive, you know. So there's so much to see historically, whether it be Akrotiri or ancient Thera, but there's just so much more beyond the history.
Okay, is it fair to say that Akrotiri was a small version of Pompeii?
Absolutely.
Yep.
So everything got covered in ash cloud and it was hidden, and now we're sort of discovering it as we go along.
Yeah, absolutely. So If you want to go and see it similar to Pompeii, go to Akrotiri. And one thing you've got to do when you go to Akrotiri is after you've walked through Akrotiri, and make sure you do it with a guide, because I waste time without a guide. You've got to go down to the water's edge and you've got to go along the beach there, and there's a little taverna called Nicola's Cave. I think it's called Nicola's Cave, and I've been there so many times. And Nicola basically has his own produce, all his own animals.
Oh, wow.
It's all his own produce, like the white aubergine. You know about the white aubergine?
Yeah.
Well, the white aubergine is brought into Santorini from Egypt, and they're famous for it. And that his moussaka with the white aubergine.
Oh, wow.
It's just, I'm salivating now talking about it. But it's an awesome taverna. It's just a wonderful place to eat traditionally, because you know you're getting local product cooked by a local. And not many people know it's there. It's hard to get to, you know. So,
Well, now that you've spoken about food, I mean, Santorini is known for a couple of things, obviously, when it comes to the gastronomy. Tomatoes in particular, capers, fava. What sort of stood out for you in terms of the produce over there?
well, the fava bean there is good. I think I personally prefer the fava out of Skinusa, but Santorini is well known for it. It's great. The tomato, let's understand why it's good produce. Because the climate there has no water. There is basically no water. So they have to get water in, and they use a desalination plant these days. What happens, and it's more, we should direct it more, let's direct it with the vines, the grapes, for instance, because they make wonderful wine in Santorini. There is an evening summer mist that comes in. And in that summer mist, it lands onto the earth. And because you've got this pyroclastic cloud that has developed as a result of the eruption, you've got this thick layer of pumice that absorbs that moisture, and that pumice is where the wineries are, where the vines are. That pumice is mixed in with the organic, nutrient-rich earth from this volcanic eruption, and because it's so light and it's got all these air bubbles in it, it absorbs the moisture. And that's how the plants get their moisture. Wow. They get watered. And the vines, for instance, they do them in a kouloura.
Yes.
So they do it. They do it in a kouloura, which is, as we know, the Greeks know it. A koulouri is that circular biscuit that we eat, the sweet biscuit. So what they do is to make sure that it absorbs the maximum amount. Rather than sending it up vertically, they turn it around and they keep it low. And that way the mist gets onto the soil, gets absorbed into these vines, and the vines actually very rarely need actual watering. And you've got that beautiful arsetico that they produce. The arsetico wine that they produce in Santorini is well known to any Greek around the world, and in fact it's known to people that aren't Greek. And of course they have the Vinsanto, right, which is the sweet red, where the grape is allowed to over-ripen and become sugary, and they use that for the red wine. So, you know, you've got this ecosystem in Santorini that is based on a soil that is porous and just a moist air that comes in, soaking it up. So you get wonderful tomatoes, like you talked about, beautiful tomatoes. I mean, once again, the tomatoes.
Cherry tomatoes.
The tomatoes in Southern Europe, let alone Greece, let alone the islands, because you're getting local produce. No one's going to bring a tomato in from another place on an island in Greece. It just doesn't happen. No. And if you do, well, it's sacrilege, right? Yeah. So these tomatoes are local, and you cut them, and they're juicy, and they're fruit. Yeah, they're fruit. So they're known for their tomato. They're known for their aubergine, the white aubergine. It's awesome. And obviously the grapes. The capers are growing on rocks all over the place. You can rip them off the sides, like horta in most islands. You know, you just rip it off the lot, throw it in the pot, and there's your greens. You know. And the capers, it's funny because the capers in Santorini, they're popular in the Greek salad. Much like they are in Dodecanese, in the Dodecanese, they're popular with the caper. But nowhere else in the Cyclades is the caper that popular in a Greek salad. So I'm not a fan of a caper in a Greek salad, but if it's a good caper that's just come out of the rock straight away, it's like rock salt. It's rock salt. You put rock salt on a salad. Yeah,
doesn't have salt.
That's right. That's right.
But like, a lot of people might listen into this, you know, this part of the discussion and think, oh yeah, you know, like, all right, how much better can these tomatoes and this produce be? I mean, every time I come back from Greece, having tried, for example, and it's particularly pronounced with the tomato, you really notice it. You really notice how the difference between that sort of mineral enriched fruit versus what we get here off the shelf.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about it now. That
one of the best meals that I had, I don't know if I've mentioned this previously on the podcast, but one of the best meals that I had in Greece, having just landed, we went to a taverna, and, we ordered the usual fare, your meze, your lukanika, and all that sort of thing. They brought out a tomatosalata, tomato salad, and all it is fresh tomato with a little bit of salt and a little bit of olive oil. I could have just sat there and eaten that, and it would have been enough. And I walked away feeling like that is one of the greatest meals I've ever had. A tomato.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, if one of the greatest experiences I've ever had, well, one of the top experiences I've had is coming back from Red Beach or Black Beach at Santorini.
Yep. Coming
back to my little villa on the caldera, on the cliff, walking down 100 steps. The further you walk down, the cheaper the value as far as the villa that you're staying in. And you sit on your balcony. You'll open up a bottle of ouzo. You'll grab a tomato, cut it up, a bit of olive oil, a bit of rock salt, and then you'll start waiting for the sun to set. And you'll look around you to your left and your right, and you'll see this cliff face with an abundance, crowded with villas and all sorts of residential hotel stuff. And people start gathering, and before you know it, you're talking to your neighbour.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was in my early 20s, and I was there on my own. I was there on my own, and there was this couple next to me that I'd run into at the steps, and I said, "Come on over." So they brought their bottle of Retsina over. Before you know it, when the sun was setting, there was 20 people on my balcony, and no one ever left,
Yeah.
And I'm an early sleeper. I wasn't even an early sleeper back then. So they were really pushing it, right? But we had a wonderful, wonderful time. It was such a...
What a story.
Great experience, and something I'll never, ever forget. And I got that in Santorini, and you can get that today. I can tell you now, I'll pay for your ticket to Santorini. If you don't sit on your balcony and you don't see someone getting a photo of a bride and a groom, you'll see it.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. If you're there in the peak of summer, you'll see it. Which I don't advise. I don't advise people going there in July and August.
Yeah.
So I reckon it's just a bit too busy. Best time to go to Santorini is May and September. It's gold.
Yeah.
Gold. September's best.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I did the same thing. I took a photo of the people looking at the sunset. Everyone congregates on that sort of hill, whatever it is. Everyone turns up and you see these flashes, and it doesn't stop. Everyone, it's flashes
And the applause when the sun finally disappears.
and they clap. Yes.
Yeah.
that's right.
It's and it happens every evening, and the sunset is beautiful, whether it's at Ia or Fira. And I suppose when I say Fira is the capital, and the reason they call it Fira is because someone screwed up and said the capital Fira should be Fira, and they called it Fira. But anyway, Fira comes from Fira, and when you do it from there, whether you do it from anywhere along there, you can see such a wonderful sunset.
So where is it better, actually? Is it Ia or Fira? What do you think? Where's a better view of the sunset? Well, they're much of
I suppose it's who you're with too. I've enjoyed sunsets at both places. What's better? A Ferrari or a Lamborghini. They're both nice.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay. Depends what you're looking at.
Yeah.
And which one's higher? I guess it helps because you're higher off the sea level, and he sort of makes it. That's why it's so popular, I guess.
Well, I'll probably say to you, there's more a younger crowd at Ia, and probably an older crowd at Fira. And Fira Stefani, you can go up to Fira Stefani, which is a bit further up from Fira, and you can see it from there as well if you just jump onto somebody's roof there. And it's pretty easy to jump from one roof to another. I don't advise it.
Actually, there was a video not long ago of people doing free running in Santorini. Have you seen it?
It happens every year. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
It's the Red Bull stuff.
That's the one.
Yeah, the Red Bull stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's awesome.
What a great advertisement as well for Santorini.
Yeah, I mean, you could be the worst photographer in the world and advertise Santorini without a problem.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. There's a lot to Santorini that people don't understand. I mean, two of the Greek Nobel laureates, wrote poetry about Santorini, about the...
Really?
Absolutely. Sephetis, Odysseus, Alytus. They wrote poetry about the ruggedness and the view and what we see today. It's another place for inspiration. I mean, if you are a writer, you're an artist, you have that creative way about you, head to Santorini in May, head there in September, even October, when there's not too much of a crowd, and you'll get reasonably cheaper accommodation, and you'll enjoy those sunsets because you're not there necessarily for the temperature.
Yep.
You're there to wind back, and the light, we always talk about the light of Greece. Corfu, Gerald Durrell wrote about that, but we're talking about Greek poets writing specifically about Santorini, Nobel laureates. So there is such a deep reason to go to Greece, to go to Santorini. Yes, it's the most popular island. If it's not Mykonos or Santorini or Crete or Rhodes, it's in the top 5 or 6. But there's more to it than just that icing on the top. You should read about it before you go. Do a little bit of homework because it doesn't. Just go to Wikipedia, for Christ's sake. You go to Wikipedia, you'll see it all. I love that guy. Mr. Wiki's an awesome guy.
Top bloke. Yeah. Well, let's talk about the beaches though. So you mentioned the Black Beach, the Red Beach.
Yep.
So what do you think of the beaches in Santorini? Because you were recently there.
I was afraid you might ask me that question.
So it might be a common.
He's diving
theme.
off the back of the boat.
The one thing that I said to my director when we first started my show was that I want to be authentic and truthful. If I make a mistake, well, I want them to know I made a mistake, and I want to be as straight as I can. Now, those beaches aren't the best beaches in the world when it comes to pebbles, red pebbles and black pebbles. It's just not my show. When you've driven a nice car, you don't necessarily want to go back and drive an average car, put it that way. It's the same sort of thing. There are so many wonderful beaches in this country that we live in Sydney and Australia. There's some beautiful sandy beaches, that fine Hymes beach sand, the finest beach sand in the world, And in Greece, there's some beautiful sandy beaches, but you're not going to find that on Santorini. But as a result of the weather, as a result of the mass population of tourists that go to Santorini, you can't be at these sites. You can't go to Akrotiri, and you can't go to ancient Thera, and you can't go to the wineries in the heat of the day. So you got to go to a beach, and there's beaches there, and they're pebbly beaches, and they're well managed. They're fantastic, but they're not my cup of tea. But if I'm gonna go to Santorini, I'm gonna go to the beach there. I'm gonna head to it. But
you're not heading to Santorini to go to the beach, effectively.
Definitely not.
They're good, but you can probably find better ones elsewhere.
Absolutely, and you're going to get a good swim and all the rest of it. But there's a lot better.
Yeah. Okay. So what are the most popular beaches then in Santorini? Do you think?
Paris is probably one of the most popular. I would have thought.
Yeah. Is Red Beach still open?
Red Beaches, they're all open.
Okay.
They're all open. There's.
And that refers to the colour of the cliff face.
So why is it red? Is it just the...
it's the volcanic...
The
volcanic geological structure of that part of the island. I know a little bit about the geology, but not everything. So I didn't study the geology of the beach, just put it that way.
He's not a geologist.
You're going to know more than us, that's for sure.
Yeah. But listen, it's a good experience. Going to the Red Beach and seeing what it's like. Going to the Black Beach, it's good.
It's one of those things that you've got to do while you're there.
I think you do. Yeah, definitely. You've got to go to a couple of... Like I went to Gaia, which is one of the most famous wineries in Greece. Have got a winery there now. There are a bunch of wineries to go to. There's one winery that we went to where they sink the bottles into the sea to mature, to age. Right. So there's a lot to do.
Okay, so there's I think I read over a dozen wineries there.
Oh, more. There's more than that. Yeah, there's more than that. Yeah, there's more than that. And the thing about it is, Santorini is one of those venues where you can be there for 2 days, and there's a 2-day visit, there's a 3-day visit, where you can see enough, and then you expand it to 6 or 7 days. I think a week in Santorini is plenty of time. A week is what you need in Santorini if you really want to see it well. If you're that arty type person that wants to have inspiration, well, you need a month there, don't you? Yeah. Just to wind down. The food's good too. There's one souvlaki.
This is what we want to know.
That my brother-in-law Sam absolutely adores. He reckons it's the best souvlaki in Greece.
Really?
Well, Captain Yanni and Kyriako are the experts, right?
Absolutely, they are.
From size of they've devoted their life to this, right? They'll tell you that they're okay there. They're good.
Yeah.
But in Fira, there's a couple of Sublazidica that are pretty good. There's one restaurant specifically, I can't remember the name of it. I went to it when I was 18, and it's still the same family there 40 years later. And that's so good to see on an island with such a high intensity of tourism, because you don't get that in the roads of the world. If you go to the main city of Rhodes, or some of the main cities of, say, Heraklion, Crete. But there, you'll get some businesses that are family owned for 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, because I can remember the moussaka there was also, I couldn't believe I had moussaka 3 times in a week. Kiriako made it because he made it for the show.
Yeah.
With the white aubergine, and I had it in Nicholas's Taverna down at Akrotiri, and I had it in this one place. If you watch the show, I can't remember what it's called, but it just brought him out, because I was walking past. We're just walking past. I said, Alex, my director, I said, look, I went here. This is where I went when I was like 20,
Wow.
And we walked in, the lady was there, and we was talking, and she said, yeah, that was my father, and anyway, it was a wonderful thing. I mean, these are just got so blessed to have experienced that.
What about the saganaki in filo with honey? Did you have that? I think that's renowned in Santorini.
Yeah, absolutely, that's so nice. I had that in Skinosa as well.
Yeah.
In Skinosa, there's a restaurant called, what's it called? I can't remember now, but it was awesome. You go to Skinosa, the island of Skinosa, which is not far from between Mykonos and Santorini. It's a tiny little island. Cafe Deli. It's called Cafe Deli, and it's a restaurant in the middle of this tiny little island, and they make the best saganaki with filo.
Wow.
And it's because they've got in Skinosa, they've got this wonderful fava bean that they're famous for as well. And their fava there, I tell you, it's just to die for.
Yeah.
Can you tell that I like food?
We're the same, mate. We're the same.
So can I just say to you, this new series, are you going to have your shirt on or off this time around? Or what?
Well,
Can you keep your shirt on, please?
Nick,
No, I'm joking.
Nick, I get a lot of people emailing me and sending me messages. I got one American guy saying, "Listen, mate, those Speedos, no one wears them anymore. I'm happy. Can you send me a size, and I'll send you a pair of swimmers."
He's right. We don't wear Speedos anymore. We wear budgie smugglers.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, and I can tell you, there's lots more to come.
Yeah, classic.
Lots more. I'm keeping my budgie slurry. That's what I learned. I'm a bronzed Aussie that has Greek heritage, and so I have to have those budgie smugglers.
They're your roots. Yeah. Don't change them, mate. I hear you.
We wore them for a laugh at the beach last year, didn't we, Nick?
Well, you did.
Oh, I did, yeah.
Got a nice photo, actually, of you.
I do, yeah.
It was really good. I was going to say, so we talked about, what about the trekking? I understand there's quite a lot of amazing treks from Thera to Ia. There's one, I think from what I read, it takes 3 hours at a really slow pace. And
there are a number of walks in Santorini, and just, walking from Thera through Ferrostefani, walking along those ancient trails, basically.
Is it
they're nice little hikes.
From Profitilias, apparently?
Yeah, Profitilias. They're all over Greece, but Santorini has its own, and they're reasonably well marked. You'll enjoy it, but just it's sort of something that you want to do. Not many people actually do them, because you don't want to do them in the heat of the day. It's the worst time, because you've got all this reflection from stone and white walls and onto you. You want to do them sort of either first thing in the morning or late in the day. And most people late in the day are watching the sunset. What you do want to do, though, Nick, is walk the path from the old port up that winding path up to Thera, right? It's a donkey path as well, and you'll see they're not donkeys, they're mules actually. You'll see the mule guys down the bottom, and just start with them and walk up with them. And you walk up. When I was a bit younger, I ran it, right?
Wow.
And I can't run it anymore, I can tell you now.
Machine.
But I've walked it several times.
That's
I've gone
high
up with
too.
it. I've gone up with the mule a couple of times, and going up with the mule, just be careful. If you're hairy, if you've got hairy legs like me, there's a good chance a lot of that hair will be gone by the time you're at the top.
Really?
Oh yeah, because you rub your legs onto the mule, and the hair goes, and the mule goes on its own. You don't have to tell it what to do. It just goes up. It knows the path.
Is it stable? Does it feel like you're going to fall off
the
mule?
It feels like you're about to fall off the mule, but you don't, and you hit the walls occasionally, so you've got to be careful. But it's an experience you have to do. And the mules are well looked after. Everybody talks about these mules not being looked after. I've got to tell you, they do. There's like 600 mules on the island.
You mentioned that last time.
They change them all the time. And, we went to interview a couple of guys, and they didn't want to be interviewed. And we said, hang on a second, guys. We know what you do. We understand, because we've spoken to a lot of the mule drivers. We know that these animals are part of the economy, and you understand that they're part of the economy, so you have to look after them.
Yep.
And they do. And if you have a good look at the mules. Now, that's today. I reckon 20 or 30 years, maybe 40 years ago, it might not have been the same. They probably didn't treat them as well as they do today. But you have a look at these mules today. They look healthy. They've dressed them really well. They've got nice little ribbons on them, and there's all sorts of plaited cotton thingamajiggies on them. They look beautiful. Now, they wouldn't look beautiful if they were all sweaty and shitty, right? Yeah. I'm allowed to say that on this, aren't I?
Yeah, you can swear, mate.
So, but they're beautiful mules. Now, I'm starting to sound like an animal lover. I love animals, but not that much.
But you're into mules, are you, Pete?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of them in Greece. A lot of goats, a lot of mules in Greece. But they're well looked after. And let me tell you, so if there's something you want to do is walk up or walk down.
How high is it? What's the walk?
That is high.
Is it 300 metres? And it'll be a walk that's, I don't know, it'll be a kilometre walk because you're winding, a 2 kilometre walk. But maybe you walk down and take the teleferique up, you know?
The cable car.
The cable car, they call it teleferique. And the cable car's got its own little history as well because, and I won't tell you too much about that, but you should go down, there's photos there of everything, you know? So, and obviously if you're going to take the teleferique up, you want to go there really, really early or late because it does get busy in June and July and there are lines. And this is the only problem with Santorini. The only problem with Santorini is that if you're on a cruise and you're on one of those 11 ships that has 2,000 people on each ship, there's 22,000 people coming into an island that has a population of 15,000. That's 1.5 times the population visiting that island for the day, along with the tourists that have come by plane. It's tough, man. Yeah. It's tough. It's really pushing the envelope of the infrastructure of the island in June, July and August. And that's why it's one of the reasons I did this show of My Greek Odyssey, because I wanted people to visit other islands and see that you can get what you see in places like Santorini and Mykonos elsewhere. That's not to say don't go to Santorini. It's to say if you're an American and you only get your holidays in June and August and you've only got your 2 weeks, well, have an expectation of a line. Yeah. You know, you're used to them with Disneyland and Disney World. Have an expectation and have an expectation that they're going to be 40-degree days. This island has no water, nothing grows, and as a result, there's a lot of rock and white stone, whitewash stone, which reflects it. The sea reflects it. You've got double and triple reflections. So you're going to have a really hot place. So lower your expectations from that point of view. But if you have choice, get there in May, get there in September, get there in October. The actual period that it is busy it's almost like Corfu, March, April, Easter, definitely Easter, right through to end of October. It's still working, you know. It might not be pumping as much in October, but you're going to get to see what you want to see in probably better weather.
Okay, so I want to talk about, apparently there's a shitload of churches on there, and they're not all Orthodox. From what I read, there's 600? Possibly more?
That's a good question, Nick. Listen, when I visit an island, I like to look at something that's unique on the island. It's very, very important to me. So I'm delivering, I feel like we have our team, our researchers, our director, myself, the whole production team. We have such a responsibility because no one's done this before. So what we want to do is we want to deliver things that are unique to that island and that island only. Yes, it has an abundance of churches. Yes, it has not just Greek Orthodox churches, but there's so many other things that are more unique to that island that need to be shown. We did Santorini over a couple of episodes. I think it might have been 2.5 or just 2. We could have been there for 3 or 4. But it was so important that we showed unique things. And that's why we really didn't exploit the church thing as much. I get people all the time. I get one lady from Kazi saying to me, you didn't show this church, you didn't show that church, you didn't show this church. Pete Pappas' mother, for that matter. why did you do this? Why didn't you do that? And I said, well, listen, we want to show things that are unique.
Yep.
Every island has an abundance of churches, you know.
Or 600 in this case.
Yeah, well, there you go. So they were scared. They were scared back then in the Byzantine times. They were very scared.
Yeah, it was probably one family had a church.
Yeah, well, that's very famous. It's not unusual that a family has its own church. My great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather built a church himself because he was chuffed out of the church.
I remember you saying.
There was only 100 metres away from him. So it's not unusual. And you've got to remember, why do they build these churches? There's no water. Santorini has no water. So they're praying for rain all the time. Let's do whatever we can to get more water. And if at the time your belief is religion and that's going to do something for you, well, you're going to build a church occasionally, aren't you?
Yeah, true.
Well, let's talk about something that is quite distinct to the island, or at least to the Cycladic Islands anyway. The architecture is very distinctly Cycladic on Santorini. Very different from other parts of Greece, as we've seen with the heavy Venetian influence, on the western side, for example. When people think Greece, Santorini is probably what they imagine in a lot of instances. You know, you called it the frosting before. You know, the white houses with the blue doors, and that sort of iconic image. My understanding is that that's part of the local council or there's rules in place around that sort of thing.
There was a former prime minister that said the Cyclades should have white and blue. White for the blue for the sea and white for the sky. You know, for the show the light, and that's what we want to do, and that's the way it should be done. I mean, at the end of the day, the lime washing is there probably more as a cleanliness thing as well, reflect the heat as well. Because there's just so much heat. When you've got the Cycladic Islands are one group of islands that suffers from no water. If you look at the island groups around Greece, you're looking at the Ionian, they get water. You look at the Dodecanese, they're near mainland, they get water. You look at the Sporadic Islands, which is north close to Thessaloniki, they get water. Crete has such a mountainous structure, they get water because they have their microclimate. But then you've got the Cycladic Islands, which are in the middle of the Aegean, they're not getting any rain, and as a result, it's just a hot place. Yeah. So they've designed their houses around reflecting the heat as much as they can, and that's the whiteness of it. Yep. I think you'll find that a lot of these houses have their own little cisterns in them to collect the rain from the roof. So the dome that you see is from a church, but if you look at the standard Cycladic architecture, it'll be a flat roof that collects water and it goes into a cistern. It's that simple. So it's a white box with not massive windows, because the more window space you have, the more heat you're letting in. So you've got these small windows with timber shutters. Timber shutters close in, stop the heat going through, and that's basically
thick walls,
and bloody thick walls, because that's another way of stopping the heat, because it traps the heat and also traps the cool environment inside the house. And in winter, it does exactly the opposite. So it keeps the heat inside, you know. So it's fairly simple architecture that's developed over the times because of its geographical location and the meteorological microclimate that they have there. Well, not microclimate, the climate of that part of Greece.
And a lot of those houses, when you go into them, some of them are actually hewn into the rock as well, aren't they?
Definitely. In Fira, in Ea, because you've got this pyroclastic cloud that's developed over the major explosion 3,600 years ago, it's fairly soft, and they've cut into it. You know, I've stayed in one of the, more than one. I've stayed in a few of them, and it's amazing how you can be outside one of these small little villas on the edge of the caldera, and the temperature might be 38 degrees outside, and as you walk in, the difference in temperature as you get to the back of this place. It cools down so well.
And no aircon. This is happening naturally.
That's right. And the wonderful thing is that you're still getting light in there, because the setting sun comes down and you're getting light onto the caldera. So you're getting light directly into these cave dwellings, if you want to call them, you know. What's wonderful is you've got to walk around Fira, Ea less so, but Fira, to go down some of these stairs and look into some of these villas if you're not staying in one, to get an appreciation of how they've developed over time. I remember the first time I went down there, there was this blonde guy that was the owner of the 13 villas that I lived in, right? And I met him and I said, I was 18 or something, I can't remember. And I said, what's the story? You're not Greek, because he had a Scandinavian accent. He said, I was a pilot flying into Santorini on some Scandinavian airline. I came here, I loved it so much, I bought property and I've never left.
Wow.
And you see a lot of that.
Yeah.
You see a lot of that. You see a lot of Scandinavians because it's just their weather patterns up there. And obviously, it's not just their weather. Their days are short in winter, so short in winter.
Yeah.
And they're too long in summer. So in winter, there's nothing to do up there. They've got nothing to do.
Yeah.
There's only one thing they do up there, I've heard.
Is that right?
Yeah, and a lot of it goes on up there. So they come down, they come to Greece, and they come to a place like Santorini, and they go, wow, look at the light. They're not used to that sort of light. We're so blessed in the country of Greece and the islands of Greece, and Santorini is known for it. You know, you go down there, you'll meet a Scandinavian that speaks perfect Greek now, and he's been living there for 40 or 50 years.
I mean, that sort of story reminds me of the latest Greek tourism ad that they put out, where I think the thing they've got a German basically says, you know, think twice before you come to Greece, because, you know, and the story goes on, and, you know, he's talking about all these things all these positive things, but he's saying them as though they're negative. And at the end, you realize that he actually moved to Greece and he's living his myth or living his dream in Greece. He got married, and, you know, so it's like, think twice.
Yeah.
But you reminded me of that. One other thing you just reminded me of, though, with all the stairs in Santorini. When I was there with my wife, then girlfriend, in 2011, I think it was. People need to realize, you know, all of this stuff is terraced. You know,
Yes.
the way you walk around, and there's a lot of climbing happening. We had this joke between me and my wife, because my mum is not big on walking around or doing much climbing. There was this ongoing joke. We'd stop somewhere and I'd say, "This is where my mum would stop." You know what I mean? If we're walking somewhere, it's not for the faint-hearted. If you don't like hiking, it's probably not the right place for you, is it?
Don't take roller bags. I'm not sure if that's a really good idea.
It's a good point.
You know, Santorini's just got
not
so much.
even.
I mean, it's become so popular. And I know I'm talking about now, I'm talking 20, 30, 40 years ago, that there is a hive of retail businesses there in Fira and Firostefani and Ia that pump. Like, you can get really wonderful jewellery in a number of stores there. You can get some beautiful art. You know, I talked to you about our beautiful copies of the Minoan art, but we've got other stuff from Santorini in our house. And it's not like we said, let's get some stuff from Santorini. Yeah. It's just that Helen and I fell in love with certain pieces, you know, and we probably have more stuff from Santorini than anywhere else.
Yeah.
Right. Is the artwork unique to Santorini, or can you get
absolutely.
Just unique to Santorini?
Absolutely, 100%.
Give us some more examples. So the artwork you just described, is it
Have you got the Cycladic mask as well, that face?
Yeah, well, Michael Butter's got one of those.
Okay.
But generally it's the Minoan art, because the colours, those colours there, it's the burnt oranges, the yellows, and you see like the fisherman that carries the fish is one of the famous ones, you know. I've got that one, and you just look at it and it just the thing about it is not so much anything other than it brings back a memory of a moment. You know, I've got a mosaic from Mykonos. Mykonos is known for its mosaics, right? I got a mosaic from Mykonos, and it was I can remember, I think it was my 50th birthday. Or it was 55th birthday or something like that. And I'm walking through the shop of mosaics. I'm looking at this stuff, and I saw this beautiful amphora mosaic, and I'm going, wow, that is absolutely magnificent. It's just a beautiful piece. I turned around to look for the salesman, and I couldn't find him. I go back, and I found him. I said, can I buy that? And he said, no, we've just sold it. I happened to be in the shop with a good friend of mine who's a barrister, and his wife who's a podiatrist that we know really, really well. Anyway, at my birthday, 3 days later, they pulled it out. They bought it for me, you know.
Oh, wow.
So I've got that on my wall above my dining table, right?
Wow.
And every time I look up at it, it reminds me of that time, my birthday, and that period, and Mykonos, and the times that we had together, let alone the wonderful artistry of this this artisan that put it together.
Yeah.
So there's those things that Helen and I have built up over a long, long time. Like, you know, our place, when you go there, it's pretty simple. There's not much there, but what's there, you know, we'll look around and it's they're all memories.
Yeah.
Wow. We sort of touched on it earlier.
Yep.
We talked about Aphrodite. I want to talk about the Atlantis story. I know you got your view on this, but from what Platon wrote in his books, he described Aphrodite and the technology they had in Aphrodite, which in his books.
Yeah.
Why do you think it may or may not be?
Well, you know, it depends. Yeah, there's a lot of myth, and in which Greeks and ancient mythology and Greek history, a lot of it's basically melded into each other. Mythology and Greek history, they've mixed it up a bit.
Yeah.
You know? Homer's Odyssey, you know, Ulysses and the Trojan Wars.
You don't know where history stops.
That's right. That's exactly. You don't know where. So we talk about Atlantis, and there's been movies about Atlantis and books about Atlantis and all that sort of stuff. The facts are, Aphrodite was a Minoan period town, trading with the Cretans, probably a colony of the Cretan Minoan civilization. Mm-hmm. And it's not my view. I never give my view on historical facts. I'm not an expert. You started by saying an expert on the Greek islands. I can tell you now, I'm nowhere near an expert on the Greek islands. But I know a little bit more than most. Anyone that claims to be an expert on the Greek islands is a bullshitter because there's just so much. There's so much. It's basically...
and as you said last time, they're all unique.
They're all unique. They're their own city-states.
Sure.
So Atlantis, there's a lot of myth there. Yes, there was a Minoan town or a colony of Crete.
A very advanced civilization.
Very advanced civilization. Yes, it was absolutely annihilated. You know, you've got people that were encrusted by lava and pyroclastic cloud. You know, civilization dead in the water. And for centuries. But the myth of Atlantis and how advanced it was, where is the fact for that? What does that mean? I don't know. I really don't know. One thing I do know is what I've been told by academics that have done their work, that have been doing it for decades, is that the Minoan civilization was definitely not, as we said before, it was decimated by the eruption, but it wasn't wiped out by the eruption. Atlantis, man, I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't want to give you an opinion.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess it depends how much you believe in the book or the manuscripts that Platon wrote. Yeah. Because he described the city, and that's where people think, wow, where was this magical city that you're describing? And some of those descriptions do match what's in Aphrodite. So, but then again, maybe you're right. That's what it was like at the time. It could have been lots of places that had that type of technology and so forth. So. And
it's located geographically appropriately. I don't know, Nick.
If you knew, you'd make a lot of money.
Yeah.
We all would.
I don't know.
No, fair enough. Okay. No,
I'm a builder by profession. So,
what is known though is that in the caldera, underwater, there are a lot of remains of towns and all sorts of stuff that have obviously gone up in smoke. And that's the only thing that we can be certain of. Whether it's connected to that story of Atlantis, highly unlikely.
Who
obviously.
knows?
But who knows?
Yeah. Have you done any diving around there? Scuba diving around Santorini and Aphrodite?
So
is it too deep?
I don't think there's anything to dive on, unlike one of the movies that they talk about. What's her name? Angelina Jolie in I think it was Tomb Raider, where she's diving on these with these Greek guys. They go down and they get killed, and she comes out. That's bullshit, you know. That's bullshit.
From what you said earlier, it sounds like it's too deep.
Yeah, it's way too deep. Yeah, you can't do. You know, standard dive surrounded is 40 meters. That's a big dive. You know,
you need a submarine to go down.
There's nothing down there, man. I mean, and if there is, it's been covered by magma. Yeah, there's not much to dive on.
For people who want to go over there and people who want to visit Santorini, we've already said that, you know, going on the fringe of the seasons, May, September, those types of times is probably the best time to go. If you were to give a top couple of things that people absolutely have to do there, what would you say to people?
I think it's different for everybody. If you're a young person, and let's call young person under sort of 35, right? You definitely need to do the tour of Minoan, which is go by boat, head up, do the walk up, walk down, do the swim in the sulphur, definitely, because people dive in. You meet people that way. It's a wonderful way. I met some people that way before I was married.
I hear there's health benefits in that.
Yeah, of course there is. Yeah, that's right. The sulphur in the water. There's a lot of health benefits in it. There's the odd nightclub there as well.
Yep.
Go to the beach. You'll meet people that way. Generally, for the population, definitely go to a winery. Walk along the main paths of the towns of Ia, Thera, and Firastefani in the evening after you've watched the sunset.
Sure.
Definitely take the teleferic. Definitely, if you can, walk up or walk down those paths. Be careful of the mule poo, which gets cleaned up regularly. Definitely, if you like a bit of history, go to Akrotiri. Visit the
Nicholas
wonderful
Cave.
Yeah, absolutely. Nicholas's Cave.
Yeah.
Is that yours?
Nicholas Cave. Nicholas Cave. He's going to be upset with me. You know how many times I've gone to a place and I've gone, I want to film you. Like I wanted to film. I can't mention a place in Mykonos on the other end of Kiki's. I wanted to film Kiki's in Mykonos.
Don't mention Kiki's.
Kiki's in Mykonos is a place where it's wood-fired meat and salad, and you have to wait.
Yep.
Like you get there, it opens at 12 o'clock, but if you get there at 12 o'clock, there's like 10 people waiting, and you've got to find the last person, and that person's I'm the last person, you wait behind him before you get called. So you go down the beach, someone stays there, you go down the beach and come back, right? And Kiki's is really anyone that knows Mykonos goes there, right, for lunch. So I know Kiki reasonably well. I said, Kiki, can we film you? He said, no, don't, please, don't film me. No. I don't want any more people here. Please get away. Take the cameras away. I'll feed you for nothing if you don't film me and don't mention me.
Just don't film me.
Yeah. And now that I've mentioned him and people are going to go to Kiki's and go, I heard about you on that podcast, Ouzo Talk. Blame Nick and Tom, not Peter, because he'll never let me in there again.
We didn't ask for this information. It's just out there. It's just out there, Kiki. Sorry, mate.
Kiki will be slapping his forehead, that bloody Peter.
I went to Mykonos, sorry, let me go back to Santorini. You
Santorini.
definitely, listen, if you get a chance, take a boat over to Therasia and see something different for a change.
Yeah.
And go to even if you just go to a taverna there and walk up the hill and walk back, it's a nice thing to do, you know. I think go to a beach there and see the red beach and see the black beach. I think it's an experience. You know? The Euros are good, like I said, the Souvladzidika.
Go and have domatokefte there somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. Going to domatokeftes are good. They hire the little buggies, like the little dune buggy things, and take a dune buggy for a drive around the island. It's pretty simple. It's an easy island, you know.
Is it easy to get around on a moped?
Man, I'm not a fan of mopeds, guys, you know. Too many accidents. Mykonos alone, like 60 people die a year.
You should know this, Nick. You've had your own you've had your own little incident.
Yeah, you don't. You know, I'm not a fan of the try things as well, because they don't balance well, and we're talking about curves and things, and just the center of gravity is not
the
right.
Waruna, as they call it.
You know,
over
it's like a penguin flying. You know, it's just wrong.
Yeah. Did I hear right? 60 people a year died in
Mykonos on mopeds. Absolutely.
Shit. That would be higher on other islands.
I think it's more. I actually think it's more, but that's the last. That's the last
conservative.
That's the last version I got a few years ago. But that's sort of number. It's ridiculous. It's not like they go right. Amount of deaths in Mykonos this year. They don't report that sort of stuff because they don't want to. But at the end of the day, what happens is, and I've seen it with some of my cousins, you know, that have never ridden a motorbike in the world. They get there and it's easy to get a one for hire, and they get one for hire on an international license, and all of a sudden they become an expert on a motorbike or a moped, which is ridiculous, you know. Motorbikes on narrow roads that are curvy, that aren't sealed, in areas that are very populous and tourist havens with people that don't necessarily know how to ride them. You know, you put all these things together.
On that side
this
of
is
the
a
road.
plane crash. You know, talk about plane crash. 6 or 7 things need to go wrong for a plane to crash. Well, there's half a dozen things there straight away that tell you don't have a moped. Hire yourself a car. Hire yourself one of those dune buggies. Stay away from the mopeds, because I can tell you now, there are people listening now that know, that have had experiences much like I hear you have. Nick. You've had something like that happen to you. So
You've got to be careful.
Conditions
are different.
I was silly, so
Well, most people are, and a lot of people get on the drink, and it's ridiculous.
I was 21. I was young.
Yeah.
You were on a moped wearing thongs and footy shorts, weren't
St.
you?
George footy shorts and no shirt.
So to answer your question, my suggestion to you is watch my show, listen to this podcast, get a couple of. Don't go and read a book, waste of time.
That's the key takeout. Watch My Greek Odyssey, the new season of My Greek Odyssey.
Watch My Greek Odyssey. Get onto Wikipedia. and see what you like. You know, like I said, I love Mr. Wiki. He's an awesome guy. You know, we obviously don't use that. I've got 2 full-time researchers that get books out of Greek libraries that haven't been pulled out for decades.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we do. But you'll talk to friends. I can tell you now, Santorini, for me, you will never, ever forget Santorini when you go. It's that simple.
Well said.
There is no replica. There are up-and-coming islands that have a bit of Santorini, might have a bit of Mykonos in them, and you're going back in the past, and you can feel it when you go there, especially if you've been to Santorini. But there's only one Santorini, guys.
Yeah.
Some organisations, it's been the best island in Europe for 10 years or something, you know.
Yeah.
It's definitely somewhere that, although I'm not a fan of the big islands, I'm not a fan of the big islands. I'm not a fan of the big touristy islands. It's definitely somewhere I recommend people go outside the main season.
You've got to experience it at least once in your life.
I think so.
It's got to be
And
on your bucket list.
And listen, man, I've been 8 times.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
saying something.
and it says a lot, doesn't it? You know.
Here. Otherwise, look, what does everyone else do? We ask locals. Sometimes it's good to have no expectation. You know, just turn up, have a little bit of an idea, and then just ask locals as well.
Yeah,
but,
of course.
But you mentioned a lot of things. You know, the artwork, the jewelry. We talked about the food, some of the hikes. You know, the beaches. Yeah. Look, I think we've got a lot out of this, Tom. I think. I'm
Absolutely.
Sure.
And look, you know, like Peter said, make sure you're watching My Greek Odyssey, the new season, which will be out by the time this podcast goes to air or comes out. Peter, mate, thank you so much for being here again. We hope to bring you back again to talk about other islands in the future. We're really looking forward to seeing this new season and season 6 and 7 as well. Thank you so much for being here, mate.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Pete, we love you, mate, and hopefully we're going to see you again, I'm sure.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Tom.
Now, a couple of things that we should mention that were mentioned during the course of this podcast. We spoke a little bit about Santorini wines. There's an entire episode that we did with the great Nick Andriatakis earlier on, with
Cretan legend.
Yeah, where we spoke at length about Santorini wines. We tried a fair bit that day as well, didn't we, Nick?
We did, mate. And the Acertico, I think it wins awards around the world. It's actually top notch.
Nick
quality.
actually said this is probably the most unique wine in the world, and mate, I do not disagree with that. It is an absolutely stunning wine. So if you get the chance, go and check out that episode, but also go and check out our first episode with Peter Maneas earlier on as well. He was the first celebrity guest that we had on this show. We're very lucky to bring him back as well.
We are. That's it, mate. He's going to be a regular, sounds like.
Let's hope so.
He looks very comfortable there, I can tell you, Tom.
Thanks, guys.
He's not so much a guest anymore. He's a guest host to some degree.
Honestly, I saw him walk down it's like our brother. He walked down the corridor. Hey, it's like our brother's back.
Yeah, that's it.
No, it was good. Anyway, great to have you, Pete. It was really good.
No worries, guys.
Make sure you follow us on social media at Ouzo Talk on most social media platforms and at Ouzo_talk on Instagram. Email us at ouzotalk@outlook.com. Nick Athanasiou, thank you very much, mate.
Tom, you're a legend. Fantastic. Great episode. Thank you.
Good on you, mate. See ya.
Ακολουθήστε μας στο Soundees, στο Spotify, στο Apple Podcasts και στο Google Podcasts.